Hey guys, welcome to our Week 17 NFL predictions for the 2023 NFL season. We are going to be looking at who we think is going to win each and every single one of these games. So who we think is going to win and what we predict the final scores will be. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. So we're in Week 17, so we have 2 weeks left of the NFL football season. And then we will be in the playoffs. So a lot of these games are pretty meaningful games because there's a lot of teams sitting around 500 that are typically in the playoff hunt as of right now. But let's go ahead and get things started. So kicking things off Thursday, December 28th at 8:15 p.m. on Prime. We have the 6-9 New York Jets versus the 10-5 Cleveland Browns. Cleveland comes into this game as 7.5-point favorites here. Obviously the Jets, no matter who they start at quarterback, they have quarterback issues. So outside of Rodgers, since he was hurt game one, whether it's been Zach Wilson, they've had a lot of issues getting first downs, pushing the ball down the field. They've been relying on the running game too much. They have offensive problems. They do have a top 10 defense technically, but the main thing is the defense is on the field the whole game, thus they're getting wore out. For the Browns, they lost a lot of players this year. They lost Deshaun Watson, they lost Chubb, but yet they kept getting better every single week. I've been picking the Browns pretty much every week now because they've been hot. They got Joe Flacco basically off the golf course, signed him. Guys come in, looks just like the Baltimore Ravens Joe Flacco from 10 years ago. You can win with Flacco. He can win with the top defense. He has shown that. He has won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. His thing is he's smart enough to know don't force the ball, don't make mistakes, just rely on your defense. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Jets come in. They average a very low 15.4 points per game. The Browns average 23.0 points per game. And on defense, the Jets give up 21.0 points per game. Cleveland gives up 20.7 points per game. So both teams technically have a top 10 defense, but the Browns are going to get after the Jets quarterback. They're going to get a lot of pressure on them. Browns should technically win this game pretty handedly. They have the better quarterback with Flacco. They have Ford at running back. They have Cooper at wide receiver. I have Cleveland getting the win here, 24-10, covering the spread. So like I said, I have them getting a very comfortable win. The next game that we'll be looking at, we're now moving on to our Saturday game. You only have one game this Saturday. That's December 30th at 8:15 on ABC. We have the 11-4 Detroit Lions versus the 10-5 Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is 6-point favorites here. This is a pretty good matchup, and this is a pretty good matchup for Saturday night. So the Lions, they are 11-4. They had a really good first half. Second half's kind of gone up and down, but they are back on the upswing right now. First half of the season, they had a top 10 offense. They had a top 10 defense. Then they kind of fell off. So the offense had a lot of turnovers. Defense started giving up a lot of points. Definitely raised their point total per game up there. Jared Goff was making a lot of mistakes, but they have gotten the ship right the last 2 weeks. They look a lot better. They have a lot of weapons. They have Goff. They have Montgomery. They have St. Brown. So they can run it. They can catch it. Lots of weapons there. And their defense has technically been playing better as of late. For Dallas, they are coming off of that really close loss to the Miami Dolphins, but Dallas is at home. Everybody knows they always play a lot better at home. That's why they are the favorites right now. They have a top 5 defense. They have a top 5 offense. So they can basically do anything that they need to do. They have Pollard. They have CeeDee Lamb. They have Dak Prescott. Looking at the team's totals here, the Lions average 27.5 points per game. They also have a top 10 offense. Dallas averages 30.1 points per game. They have a top 5 offense. And on defense, the Lions give up 23.7 points per game. Dallas does have a top 5 defense. They give up 19.1 points per game. The reason that the Cowboys are the favorite, this is a really good matchup here. This is 2 very good teams, 2 teams that are trying to make the Super Bowl. But I have Dallas getting the win. 30-23, covering the spread. They are a very good team, and they are at home. That's the main kicker here. It's really hard to beat the Cowboys in Dallas. For the next games that we'll be looking at, we're now moving on to our Sunday slate of games. Sunday, December 31st at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the 4-11 New England Patriots versus the 9-6 Buffalo Bills. Buffalo is 13-point favorites here. That's a massive spread for this in-division game. With the Patriots, I don't know what the Patriots have going on, but they seem to have not gotten the memo to try to lose these games to try to get a top 5 draft pick. They've actually been trying to play really competitively. Zappe has been playing really good the last 3 weeks. Obviously, they will always have a pretty stout defense under Bill Belichick. The issue is the offense. They have a lot of issues getting first down, but they've actually looked pretty decent the last 2 to 3 weeks. If Bill Belichick is getting fired, I definitely see why he's trying to win every game. If he's not getting fired, I don't know why Robert Kraft is trying to win these games. What's the point of winning 5 or 6 games and then having the number 10 pick? No, you want to basically bomb, get a top 5 pick, draft either Caleb Williams or Drake May or Marvin Harrison Jr. If you win these worthless games, to me, there's just no point, but nonetheless, they have been playing a lot better. Buffalo Bills, obviously, they came off of a really strong win, and then they almost lost to the Chargers last week. Beat them at a end of the game field goal. Really close. That wasn't a very heartwarming game. So if you are a Bills fan, that was probably pretty nerve-wracking, but they got it out of their system. They were due to have a really sloppy game. They did, and they won it. So that's a big thing to kind of get that out of the way. Bills are pretty big favorites here. When you look at the team stats here, New England comes in. They're averaging 14.1 points per game. That's almost as bad as the Iowa Hawkeyes. That's pretty pathetic. And the Buffalo, they have a top 10 offense. They average 26.9 points per game. On defense, the Patriots give up 21.5 points per game. And Buffalo also has a top 10 defense. They give up 18.4 points per game. Buffalo is one of the better rounded teams. Top 10 offense, top 10 defense. Obviously, they have a lot of playmakers. Josh Allen leads the NFL in total touchdowns. He's closing in on 3,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, 15 picks. Lots of picks, but lots of touchdowns. And I think he's also ran for 8 or 10 touchdowns. They have Cook at running back. They have Diggs at wide receiver. Lots of playmakers. I have the Bills getting the win here, 27-13. So I have them getting the win, getting the 10 wins, and covering the spread also. The next game that we're looking at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-8 Atlanta Falcons versus the 6-9 Chicago Bears. Chicago is a 3-point favorite here. Falcons, they are loaded on the offensive side with playmakers. They have lots of playmakers. They have Bijan Robinson at running back. They have London. They have Kyle Pitts. Biggest issue is the quarterback position. Whether it's Desmond Ridder, whether it's Heineke, really doesn't matter. They're both not very good at all. In spite of them, they have been winning a few games. They're kind of hovering around 500, trying to get back to 500 with a win here this week. But the Bears have Justin Fields. Justin Fields has been having a really good season so far. He's missed a lot of games so far, but when he has played, he's putting up pretty good numbers. He can run, he can throw, so he can kind of do a bit of everything. Defense has actually been playing pretty good for the last few weeks. Justin Fields. A lot of people have the Bears drafting a quarterback in the top 5. Do they do that? I don't know. If they do, they're probably going to want to trade Justin Fields. So Justin Fields knows that he's going to be playing as a starting quarterback next season. He just doesn't know if it's with Chicago or if they're going to try to trade him and he's going to be playing somewhere else. Looking at the team stats here, Falcons average 19.1 points per game. Chicago, 20.9 points per game. And on defense, Falcons, pretty decent defense. They give up 19.2 points per game, and the Bears give up 23.0 points per game. I have the Bears getting the win here. I have them winning this game 24-17 and covering the spread. I just think that they have more to play for. Justin Fields has something to play for. Falcons always kind of pull out a win when they're not supposed to win, so they can definitely win this game. But as of right now, I am going to go with the Bears. Next game that we're looking at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-8 Las Vegas Raiders versus the 8-7 Colts. Colts are 3.5-point favorites here. So the Colts, they have a pretty top-heavy division. They want to win this game. They're still in the playoff hunt, technically. For the Raiders, they're kind of playing for something else. So they have Antonio Pierce, who is the interim head coach because Josh McDaniels was fired. They've played a lot better under him with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. So he's actually coaching, and the team is playing for his job. They want to get him the coaching job going into next season. So he is coaching to become the head coach permanently, and the team is playing with the motivation to get him that job. So they definitely have something to play for. They've played really well the last 2 weeks. Colts, they have something to play for because they are in the playoff hunt. Obviously, they don't have Anthony Richardson, but they have Gardner Minshew. They have one of the deeper running back rooms in the country. They have Moss. They have Jonathan Taylor. They have Pittman at wide receiver. So they have playmakers, definitely. And looking at the team stats here, you have the Raiders. They come in, they average 19.0 points per game, and the Colts average 23.6 points per game. On defense, the Raiders give up 19.6 points per game. Colts give up 24.7 points per game. So the Colts have the better offense, but the Raiders have the better defense. But they both have motivation to play for something. I have the Colts getting the win here, 24-20 at home. I have them covering the spread. But this game is 50-50 because these teams are pretty close. Raiders do have that stout defense. They have the motivation. But the Colts have the better playmakers as of right now. So I'm going to ride with them this week. Next game that we're looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 8-7 LA Rams versus the 5-10 New York Giants. The Rams, 4.5-point favorites here. The Rams have been one of the hotter teams for the last month, basically based off of their offense. Stafford has been chucking the ball. He's closing in on 3,700 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 picks. They have Williams at running back closing in on 1,100 yards. And they have one of the better 1-2 combos at the wide receiver position. They have Nakua closing in on 1,400 yards as a rookie. And they also have Cooper Kupp. They have lots of playmakers, and their defense has been playing better. With the Giants, obviously, Daniel Jones was a complete disaster. Tommy DeVito, though, he has stepped in, has kind of lit a spark under the Giants. And their defense has also been playing better for the last month. But they just really do not have any playmakers. So the Rams have the far better roster. Looking at the team stats, the Rams average 23.8 points per game. Giants, a very, very low, almost Patriots low. They average 14.3 points per game. And on defense, the Rams give up 22.1 points per game. Giants give up 24.7 points per game. So the Rams have the better offense. They have the better defense. Giants have a horrible offense and a horrible defense. I have the Rams winning this game on the road, 27-20, and covering that spread. And they have something to play for because they can still technically compete for the playoffs. So they have that, and their offense is really hot right now. Next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 3-2 Arizona Cardinals versus the 11-4 Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia 10.5-point favorites here. Another very large spread. Cardinals, obviously, they've had Kyler Murray back for the last 6 to 7 games. He's had some good games. He's had some bad games. He is pretty rusty, but the Cardinals have a very bad roster. They don't have a good offense. They don't have a good defense. So basically, they're just playing for draft position. Do they draft a new quarterback? As of right now, it looks like they're trying to keep Kyler Murray, but they really need to retool this roster. They are missing a lot of pieces with their playmakers. Eagles, I picked them to win big this past weekend because obviously they got to get the ship right. They're closing in on the playoffs. You want to go into the playoffs hot. Look for them to win back-to-back games here. They just have the far better roster. They have Hurts at quarterback. He's been up and down this season, but he's a lot better than he's been playing. He's closing in on 3,700 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 13 picks. Has to cut down to picks, and their defense has to play better. But look at their weapons here. They have Swift at running back, closing in on 1,000 yards. They have A.J. Brown. They have Smith. Too many weapons. When you look at the team stats here, the Cardinals come in, they average 18.3 points per game. The Eagles average 26.1 points per game. And on defense, both teams are pretty bad defenses. The Cardinals give up 26.9 points per game. The Eagles, 24.4 points per game. I have the Eagles winning back-to-back games here, trying to get into the playoffs on a winning streak, winning 34-20 and still covering that 10.5-point spread. Next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 7-8 New Orleans Saints versus the 8-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay, 2.5-point favorites here. These teams are pretty competitive here. So the Saints have been playing a lot better the last few weeks. Passing game has kind of gotten going. Derek Carr has not thrown accurately past 5 yards this season. Passing game is looking a little better. They still have Olave. They still have Kamara. So they have the weapons there at running back and at wide receiver. And they have a very good defense. So their roster is a lot better than their record shows. For the Buccaneers have been hot for the last month. Baker Mayfield is hands down having a really good season. Best year since his rookie year. He's closing in on 3,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 8 picks. He's not doing anything to lose in the game. Playing very smart this season. Hands down, getting Bowles, the head coaching job probably. But they have White at running back closing in on 900 yards. They have Evans, they have Godwin. So they have a really good roster also, and their defense has also been playing well. They have a very good run defense. So their goal is going to be to force Carr to have to beat them in 3rd and long situations. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Saints averaging 22.1 points per game. The Buccaneers average 21.7 points per game. And on defense, the Saints give up 19.8 points per game. Tampa Bay gives up 20.1 points per game. Tampa Bay, coming off of that beatdown of the Jags, I have the Buccaneers continuing that, winning 24-17 and covering the spread. But this game can be pretty close because the Saints win these type of games when they're kind of not supposed to, but they're kind of a 500-ish team, so they could definitely win this game 24-17 also. But I do have the Bucs winning this because they've looked really good for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Next game that we're looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 11-4 San Francisco 49ers coming off of that pretty bad loss versus the Baltimore Ravens. They'll be playing the 4-11 Washington Commanders. San Francisco, 13-point favorites here. So Vegas obviously has them getting back on track. San Francisco has hands down probably the best top-to-bottom roster in all of the NFL. They have Brock Purdy, who had a god-awful game this past week, but he is closing in on 4,100 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 11 picks. They have McCaffrey at running back. He's by far the best running back in the country right now. He's closing in on 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. They have Ayuk. They have Kittle. They have Debo, lots of weapons on offense, and they probably have the best defensive roster also in the country right now. They got better at the trade line because they also added Chase Young. They can cover in the secondary. They have great linebackers. They have a good D-line. They can do a lot of things. Washington Commanders, Sam Howell's had a bad last few weeks, but he was doing really good yardage-wise, but he's the most sacked, most hit quarterback in the country. Look for that to continue this week. They're going to be hitting him a lot. He's going to be running for his life. He will definitely be forced to scramble. And Ron Rivera is not coaching for his job because he's going to be getting fired. Definitely deserves to be fired. The 49ers average on offense 29.6 points per game. They have a top 5 offense. Washington averages 20.6 points per game. And on defense, San Francisco also has a top 5 defense. They give up 17.8 points per game. Washington gives up 30.2 points per game. I have the 49ers cruising to an easy win here. Easy win, winning 31-10, covering the spread. This game could be like a 31-3 game. I would not be surprised, but they should put it on Washington this weekend. Next game we're looking at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 2-13 Panthers versus the 8-7 Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville, 6.5-point favorites here with the Panthers. So their passing game has actually looked a lot better under Bryce Young for the last few weeks, but I'm not putting any stock in that. Props to them. They have absolutely no reason to lose. They have no first-round pick coming up this season. So they're just trying to build around Bryce Young. They did fire their coach, so they have coaching issues. They have roster issues. This is not a good roster at all. A lot of pieces missing. They have no first-round pick. So they're kind of not going to have a good draft either. So they might be in a similar position next season. Hopefully they'll be a little better. For the Jags, they're on a 4-game losing streak. They have to end that. What better team to play than a 2-win Panthers team? So I'm basing this pick off of Trevor Lawrence playing. He's been in concussion protocol. He's hurt his arm, his leg. But I'm going to be betting that he starts this weekend. Looking at the team stats here, Panthers average 15.7 points per game. That's just horrible. Jags average 22.1 points per game. And on defense, Panthers give up 25.4 points per game. And Jacksonville gives up 22.9 points per game. I have Jacksonville getting the win here. I have them winning this game 28-17, finally ending the losing streak, getting back in the win column, moving into first place in their division, and they will cover that spread. The next game that we're looking at is at 1 p.m. on CBS, 2 of the hottest teams in the country. This is one of the best games of the year so far and the best game of the weekend. At 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 11-4 Miami Dolphins coming off of their win versus the Dallas Cowboys. Very good win. They'll be playing the Baltimore Ravens sitting at 12-3, coming off of their beatdown of the San Francisco 49ers. Baltimore is 3.5-point favorites here, so they are the favorite team. They are at home. It's probably also going to be pretty cold here. The Dolphins, do not underestimate their offense. They have one of the best offensive rosters. They have Tua, they have Mostert, they have Achin, they have Hill, Waddle, Berrios. Lots of weapons at every single skilled position. Waddle might not play this weekend, but he might play. They still have Hill. Do not underestimate the talent on the offensive side. Defense has been playing really good for the last month. They also have one of the better rush defenses in the country. Ravens, though. So Lamar Jackson's probably the favorite for the MVP as of right now, putting up big stats, running the ball, throwing the ball, and they also have a top 5 defense. So one of the better rounded teams in the country as well. And they did beat the 49ers, who everyone thought was the best team in the country so far this year, and they beat them pretty bad. So that moves them into that number 1 slot. Looking at the team stats here, Miami averages 30.9 points per game. That's the number 1 offense in all of football. Baltimore averages 27.8 points per game. That's a top 5 offense. And on defense, Miami gives up 20.9 points per game. Very solid defense. Baltimore gives up 16.3 points per game. That's a top 3 NFL defense. I have the Ravens here getting a close win, but this game could be very hard fought. I have them winning 28-20 and covering the spread. Could Miami win this game? Definitely. I would not be surprised. But as of right now, Baltimore is chugging on all cylinders. They have the Super Bowl in their sights. Dolphins could supplant them here. If they do, then they would then be the number 1 team in the entire NFL. But I have the Ravens winning and covering the spread. The next game, can you believe it? We're still in the 1 p.m. games, and we're running out of NFL games for this week. Looks like every single game is at 1 p.m. this weekend. But 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 5-10 Tennessee Titans versus the 8-7 Houston Texans. Houston, 5-point favorites here. Titans, obviously, they have Vrabel as the head coach. He is always going to have a very stout, tough, hard-nosed defense. They'll always have a good defensive line. Will Levis has been playing at quarterback. He's having a pretty decent year so far, filling in for Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill was an awful quarterback. They have Derrick Henry, so they will be looking to establish the line of scrimmage, run the ball, control the game clock. Houston, they've lost the last couple of games, but C.J. Stroud has been hurt. He has been in concussion protocol. I'm betting on him coming back this weekend. They haven't said if he's playing Sunday, but I'm going to be guessing that as of right now, he should be on the field Sunday. That's going to give them a lot of energy going forward. He was the offensive rookie of the year so far this year. He's closing in on 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, and they have Collins at wide receiver. So Tennessee's trying to keep the ball out of Houston's hands, but Houston, if they have C.J. Stroud, they're definitely going to be getting some first downs. Looking at the team stats here, you have Tennessee comes in, they average 18.1 points per game. Houston, 21.9 points per game. On defense, Tennessee gives up 21.4 points per game. Houston gives up 22.1 points per game. I have Houston with C.J. Stroud winning a close one, 21-17. So I'm going with the +5 here. I do not have them covering the spread, but I do have them getting the win and trying to keep pace in their division. Next game that we're looking at 4:05 on Fox. Finally, a non-1 game. We have 8-7 Pittsburgh Steelers versus 8-7 Seattle Seahawks. Seattle 3.5-point favorites here. This is a really good matchup. Both of these teams are just over 500. They both have the same record. They're both in search of their 9th win. Pittsburgh Steelers, Mason Rudolph comes in this past week. He goes off. I think he threw for about 350 yards. He had his best game as a Steeler. But I'm not buying that all of a sudden they've completely turned the offense around. I'm not buying that at all. They had a great game. Props to them, but they still have offensive issues. They have a very good defense led by TJ Watt. That will always keep the game close. That will always keep them in the game. But they still haven't sorted out the offense. They've had offensive problems since Ben Roethlisberger retired. For Seattle, Geno Smith was hurt, came back, solid game. They are 8-7. They have a pretty good roster. They have DJ Metcalf. He was making some crazy catches this past week. Looking at the team stats here, you have Pittsburgh coming in, and they average 17.1 points per game. Seattle averages 21.3 points per game, but Pittsburgh does have a solid defense, giving up 19.4 points per game. They're going to get a lot of pressure on Geno, and Seattle gives up 23.5 points per game. So I'm actually going to go with Seattle getting the win here. 20-17, so I'm going with that +3.5. I do not have them covering the spread, but I have them winning. But this game is almost virtually a tie, 50-50. Pittsburgh can definitely win it 20-17. So they can win it. Seattle can win it. They're kind of both similar teams. They are in the same situation. Both of them need to be looking for franchise quarterbacks as of right now. Next game that we're looking at 4:25 p.m. on CBS. We have the 5-10 LA Chargers versus the 7-8 Denver Broncos. Broncos come into this game as 3.5-point favorites here. As I was making this video, I just saw that Sean Payton benched Russell Wilson and will be starting Stidham at quarterback. Why? I don't really know. So Wilson's closing in on 3,100 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 8 picks. He's not the reason they're 7-8. They have a lousy defense. The roster's not too good. Now, he's not doing anything to win them games. He's just being efficient, throwing for 150 to 200 yards per game. He's not throwing picks. So he's definitely playing better than he did last year, but he's not playing well. But I don't know why Sean Payton's benching him. I think Sean Payton's basically trying to take blame off of himself. I'm not a Sean Payton fan. He only won 1 Super Bowl with Drew Brees, so he kind of wasted Drew Brees' career. Good coach, but not a great coach. Gets way too much praise to me. Chargers, Justin Herbert is hurt, obviously, so they're not going to have him this game. Mike Williams out. This has been a really beat-up team. Bad defense. They did fire their coach. Should have fired him 2 years ago to me. But Chargers, they're shopping for a coach this offseason. They have problems. Denver Broncos have problems. They just made another problem by benching Russell Wilson, because now if Stidham does bad, do you move Russell Wilson back into the starter? You've created so much problems by now benching him. Now he's going to be really angry. So the coach kind of created a problem there to me that wasn't necessary. But I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Looking at the team stats here, Chargers average 21.7 points per game. Denver 21.8 points per game. And on defense, Chargers give up 24.6 points per game. Denver 25.1 points per game. So these teams are virtually even in every category. But that was with their starting quarterback. So that was with Herbert. That was with Wilson. That's completely been thrown out now because now they have 2 completely different quarterbacks. Either way, this is kind of a hard game to gauge because we're talking about 2 quarterbacks that don't have much playing time. But I have Denver winning this one 24-17, covering the spread. Maybe Russell Wilson still plays this game. We don't really know as of right now, but I have Denver getting the win. But this is going to be a really sloppy one, both on and off the field. Next game that we're looking at 4:25 p.m. on CBS, you have the 8-7 Cincinnati Bengals versus the 9-6 Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is 7-point favorites here. So the Bengals sitting at 8-7. Jake Browning, he is filling in for Joe Burrow, has actually played better than Joe Burrow so far this year, having a very solid game. Chase might be back this weekend, so that would be a big pickup if he is able to play, and they still have Mixon at running back. So they have weapons there. They have Jake Browning playing well at quarterback. But what the Chiefs have is they have a top 10 defense. They can get after it. They're going to be looking to put Jake Browning in the 3rd and long situations, trying to force the Bengals to beat them vertically through the air under pressure. Chiefs, they have a lot of issues. They have a lot of guys that cannot catch balls. They have serious cases of the Butterfingers. Outside of Travis Kelce, lots of issues at the skill positions. Patrick Mahomes closing in on 4,000 yards. 26 touchdowns, and 14 picks. That's un-Patrick Mahomes numbers, but they don't have a wide receiver number 1. That's the main thing holding them back. Looking at the team stats here, Cincinnati averages 21.2 points per game, Kansas City 22.2 points per game, and on defense, Cincinnati gives up 23.0 points per game. Kansas City gives up 17.7 points per game. Kansas City must get back in the win category. They're falling way far behind. They've had a really sloppy second half of this season, but I have them somewhat righting the ship this week, winning 27-13, covering the spread, getting to 10 wins, but still their issues at the skilled position has still not been solved. They probably won't be able to solve them till the offseason. And the final game we're going to be looking at 8:20 p.m. on NBC, we have the 7-8 Packers versus the 7-8 Vikings. Both of these teams, obviously, this is a pretty big rivalry here. Minnesota is 2-point favorites. Packers, Jordan Love, they've had a pretty decent second half. Now, they've not been playing well. Defense has been playing better. They've had some sloppy games, but Love has had a second half that was a lot better than his first half. He's closing in on 3,600 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 11 picks, and he can also run. Vikings, really beat up team. They lost Kirk Cousins. They lost Justin Jefferson for a lot of time. They got Dobbs. He stunk. So they're down to their 3rd option at the quarterback position. But yet, they continue to win. They continue to be competitive. And they are the favorites here versus the Packers. But I just think the Packers are the more rounded team with the better quarterback. Looking at the team stats here, you have Green Bay coming into this game. They average 22.2 points per game. Minnesota averages 20.9 points per game. And on defense, Packers give up 22.1 points per game. Minnesota gives up 19.9 points per game, so they have a pretty decent defense. But I have Green Bay getting the win. I have them winning 23-21. So I'm going with that +2. I have the Packers getting the upset win here and getting back to 500. So that's my breakdown of the Week 17 NFL games. Hit that like button and subscribe. And if you have any comments, drop them below and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks.